Hello and welcome to another edition of the VBBA Today. I am your esteemed co-host, Dustyn Mad Dog Dubuque from the Menomonie Blue Caps, and I'm here for the third episode, even though the second episode is going to come out after this one because I myself lost it into the world of the internet for far too long. But with Gary Schiappacasse, which is still one of my favorite last names of all time, from the Chicago Salmon and the board president to the VBBA. How is it going, Gary?
Oh, it's a beautiful time of year. The sun is out. There's no snow on the ground yet, and I can get outside and do Gary things because, as Dustyn knows, I'm not a sit in the room kind of person. I need to be out and about.
Well, like
So,
you said, we're as in the late September months or weeks that we're doing this here. Most of the teams are starting to like end their season, so it's sad for that part. Besides those weird Southern people who can play all year round, which from
yes,
a
yeah.
Wisconsinite, nothing
Or,
makes me
or
more
those,
upset
or
than
those
when in
people out
January I see a
west,
match.
or the people out at west in Arizona. They're about to get started again.
Yeah, I know. Every year when I'm like sitting in the middle of winter in January, and then all of a sudden some games pop up in Arizona or Florida or something, and I'm like, oh, that's right. Some teams can play in January normally, so it's that time of year.
And who knows? Maybe one day you'll get your Blue Caps out to Arizona and play one of the Arizona clubs. It's a great time of year. The trick is to get out there during spring training and pick your favorite club. But wait a minute. Minnesota, which team do you follow? Minnesota or the Milwaukee?
Most of my team follows the Brewers, but because of our proximity to the cities, I'm more of a Twins guy, even though I just watched them collapse heavily. So,
So that means you'd have to go to Florida to watch the Twins. Yeah.
yeah. But that's all right. I mean, we don't mind. That is on before Gary and I recorded, we were talking bucket list things to do in vintage baseball, and I will say Arizona is on our bucket list to do sometime in the middle of winter to get out
And
of
I
the.
recommend that to anyone that's in the vintage baseball community that has to deal with the colder weather. Get out to Florida, get out to Arizona. The clubs are always happy to see a club from other parts of the country, and they'll accommodate and help and do whatever it takes to get you out there. So, and
Yeah,
that's
well, with that question before we lead into like why we're here, I have to ask Gary, what are like if you had to tell like vintage baseball players like three or four of like the must go to things to do in vintage baseball. And let's keep the Ohio Cup out of this. I think we all know that one.
yes, yes.
That's like the number one. But what are like three other ones? If you're gonna play vintage baseball, these are the places you need to go.
Well, you certainly have to get down to Florida. The clubs down there that, of course, I don't remember the names of any of them, but they play out of the Orlando area. They play down by Fort Myers, and they have a major event. Those three clubs in Florida, actually, every time there's a vintage game during their season, all three clubs are part of it. So they're round robins with three clubs, and they never have enough players. So if you can't get your whole club down there, and you'd like to get to Florida and hang out at Disney World and whatever, go ahead and do it. It's a great place to be. In Arizona, the team I got a chance to play, unfortunately, is not around anymore. The Prescott Club that Mike Adrian had started, he unfortunately passed away. And the fun part for me about Prescott, which is another for me a place to go if you can get other players to play in that space.
Oh, hang on. I think Gary's cutting out for a second here.
Oh,
Oh, there you go. I don't know what's up. You just get like this 2 second thing.
my son, he's playing video games in the other room, and that's
That'll do
probably
it.
impacting the signal.
It'll do it. Keep
It's his
going, Gary. You're good.
before the kids come home. Um, so no, Prescott, Arizona. It's kind of northwestern Arizona. So what I do is I fly into Phoenix and then I drive up to Prescott and beautiful, beautiful countryside. The cliffs and the rocks and the cactus and whatever else. And those for me just being out with the other clubs. And then years ago we had a conference out in Long Island, and I got to tell you, because there's always this debate about which team or which part of the country started vintage baseball. And I'm pretty sure the more I look at the historical facts, and I'm sure my people out east will agree with me, it was Bethpage Park, and the 1980s is where it all started. And then the people in Columbus picked up on it from there. And it's an old site. It's a historical site. I think it was some sort of factory site back in the day, and it's a large, I don't know if it's a state or international or city park. I don't know, it's just oozing history when you get out there. And that's actually a much nicer space than when you go to the Ohio Cup. The Ohio Cup's just a big old open field. It's near the Ohio Historical Society's building. They have a village that, of course, those people that don't know about it, they're remodeling or updating or fixing it up. So the village will be closed for the next 2 years. So if you're looking to go to the Ohio Cup, the village is not going to be part of it. And I think that includes their field that the Ohio Muffins play on.
Well, that's good to know. Well, and then this kind of segues really well because we're kind of here chit-chatting a little bit about the VBA newsletter that's going to be coming out shortly. And I got to kind of scrolling it now, and the beginning part of the chronicle of the newsletter, you're kind of wrapping up the summer. As we all know, vintage baseball, as we said, starts to wrap up for most people right now. And you bring up a lot of the festivals that go on throughout the country. What are some of the ones that kind of highlight that
Well,
you know?
I have never been to the Gettysburg one. I've heard good things and bad things. Don't be there when it's raining.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was just there. I was there 2 months ago. It was
oh,
an experience.
you had the good weather.
Yeah, we had great weather. It was really nice on Saturday. It was really hot on Sunday. It's kind of amazing, that festival, really, because like you don't really think of it as like it's Gettysburg and it's 1864 baseball until like you kind of like start driving and then you see the massive. Like I know there's 30 teams, but in no way did it make me think like it's going to be this large scale, legitimate event. And
Well,
then
and
you
it's
get out
spread
there
out.
and it
Is
almost
it
blows you away.
is it fairly spread out? Was the Ohio Cup's pretty?
No, it's all five fields are right in a row.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So you're all right there in the parking lot because the parking's so big. If you play on one of the first three fields, you have so many people watching you just out of because most people aren't going to walk to field five.
That I'd love to hear that part about the people watching.
Yeah.
My concern about a lot of the vintage clubs is they don't play with an audience. It's a local field, and
Yep.
the players are there. And sometimes it's location. Sometimes I think it's about the public.
Yeah. And the thing about the Gettysburg thing that again I didn't think about is like people because it's Gettysburg, it's a tourist attraction every day.
Right.
And then you forget that people would go there to watch this because it's all part of the lore of the Civil War is baseball. So
Yep.
like that didn't cross my mind either until I was there, and I'm like, wow, there's probably people that came here to Gettysburg this weekend because they saw this was happening.
Yep.
So it's really cool. I definitely tell people they should go. Be
Good.
ready for 1864 rules for the non-1864 teams.
Yeah.
But everybody has a good time.
Is that no bound rules
No,
1864?
they still did bound, but it's the stealings for a guy
Yes,
that
the
doesn't do
stealing.
the major stealing. The stealing's pretty much.
Yes, yes. Well, that means you actually have to have a good catcher that can actually throw the ball to second base.
Yeah, it's a learning experience though. It's really fun. I will
Yeah.
admit, even our guys after it was over for a team that doesn't do that very often, we had a good time. Let's just say that. So,
Well, that's good to
coming
hear.
from me, who's been there, it's very cool.
Well, I think that's for some players, the attraction of vintage baseball is that whole thing of adjusting to the different eras and the rules. I know out east they'll play the 1860, I think it's 1864, and then on occasion they'll play 1886. And I don't see that as a problem as long as they're staying within the structure of that system of rules. They're not crossing the line and doing the whatever that guy's name was that tried to mess around with vintage baseball years ago. Bonham started with a B. Anyway, so yes, and of the other, I don't think I've really done the festival I went to years ago was the black swamp frogs. They're near Toledo, Ohio, and they put on a really major event there. Unfortunately for me, they decided that I should be the pitcher that day, and they play on this large soccer field area. So there was literally no shade. The good news is they put out a good spread of food, which is, I'm always there for the food. It's not really the games. That's not what I'm there for. So that was really cool. And turns out Sussman was the first president of the VBBA, and that's his hometown. He's now into his early 80s. So they've been doing that event for a good number of years. I don't think it gets the same publicity as what they do out in Bethpage Park or what they do at the place that you just talked about. And I've never been a festival person. I really like the ability to connect with the players on the other team and just spend time with them. So for me, and when I was scheduling for the Salmon, there were certain clubs. Obviously, the Deep River Grinders was always a great experience. And back when they were a full club, the Ground Squirrels were pretty good. Trying to think of what other clubs. And of course, we always liked to play the Elkhart Railroaders. And back when they existed, the House of David Echoes, because these were clubs that started back in the early days, the early 1990s, and they were kind of model clubs for the Salmon, which, believe it or not, the Chicago Salmon are just finishing. You ready? Make you feel really young. 29th season of the Chicago Salmon. They've been
Pretty
around
awesome.
since the beginning of VBBA. So, and more power to Ellie Boss Lady Carlson that she's been there for that club all those years. Can I brag on Boss Lady just for a minute? Is
Of
that okay?
course.
So this is the dream person. She is the club owner. She created the club. She got her master's degree. I'm going to mess this up in historical clothing, University of Kansas. So she makes all of her outfits that she wears. She also manufactures, redesigns the shirts that the players wear. She's designed the clothing that the ladies wear. Oh, that's right. Did I leave out the fact that she cooks the meals for every one of the Salmon home games? Come on, you've been to one
Well,
of the.
now I'm down. I'm definitely coming to play.
Oh,
I mean, we were coming anyway, but now I think it's for sure.
no, and there's always something. Let's see. This last time she did the spice cake with the pecans and the brown sugar frosting. That's in addition to, she decided to do instead of her regular pork kind of thing, she did, what do you call it when you grind up the pork and make it into, it was barbecued pork. It was, and, and there wasn't enough room on my plate. And I'm that person that has to taste everything. That's all I need to tell you. So, and she's the historian. So if we cross the line, she'll call us out on it. And I don't think there's another club out there that's got somebody with the boss lady's credentials. And she's pretty quiet about it. She doesn't, get all excited and get herself on the high. So I've been really lucky to be part of that. It's 1999. It's like, whatever. It's been a great experience. But
Yeah, we just played the Blue Caps just played the St. Croix from Stillwater, Minnesota.
yes,
And every one of them guys almost is like, I mean, they're the guy. I mean, Blue Caps are what, 12 or 13 years now.
okay,
And every one of them guys are like, I played them and I was just like, it's crazy to see all the same guys. And they
yes,
played on that team 15 years prior
yes,
to that. So when I
yes,
did like the end of the game things, I just said like one of the coolest things about vintage baseball is this. Like these are the
yes.
same group of guys that I met 12 years ago when I started playing, and they're still here, and they were here 12 years before that.
It's a
You
special
know,
family.
it
Once you
is.
time with vintage baseball community, we grow. The unfortunate thing is the guy that was the captain of the Benton Harbor House of David, he just passed away. So, and I'm sorry again, not remembering his name. Um, Something Waterboy is his nickname. Great guy. He was a newspaper guy. Was his full-time job, and after Ron Taylor stepped back from running the club, he stepped up. So Boss Lady will be out there on Friday to be part of the memorial service. That's something that also goes on. It's not just on the field, but it's the relationships with the players, and you kind of support each other, good times and bad. That I don't think people get when they first get involved in vintage baseball. It's not just about athleticism and knowing the rules, but it's about the relationships.
Yeah, I always tell people that whenever like somebody wants to join the team or something, and we've recruited a little bit in the last year or two. It's like
Okay.
almost the first thing I tell them is like, the number one thing is trying to just have a good time and be with the crew that you're going to be with. Like
Yeah.
if you can't make that jump, you're probably not going to last in this.
No.
Like that's really the jump. It's not the everything else comes with it, but like being a part of the group and you know how like you said your team's been going for however long they have. It's sometimes hard to break in the group, but the
Yep.
nice thing about vintage baseball is like it always feels like you can get in easily.
That's the way I hope it is, that we're a welcoming community. We joke on the Salmon about people will come and ask if there's a tryout to be on the Salmon, and we're like, just show up. We'll figure the rest of it out. We're happy to have you. Thanks for being interested in joining the Salmon. And as you know, you got players that they can show up for one game, but not the next game. So you always want to have some extra players on your team list anyway, because, oh, that's right, we have lives, we have families, and we just can't be at every game. So anyway, I'm guessing you're going to move on to your next question.
I don't
And
know, you're good. This is the fun part about these. You
yeah,
just gotta go.
thank you.
And it gets you where you want to go. Well, and, you know, the whole reason why we do this is to just encourage people to follow the VBA and everything we do. And I still, again, I'll say it on every podcast, the VBA website's the best vintage baseball thing you can physically ever need. The amount of times I reference the site throughout the season is no matter how many years you play, questions get asked and stuff happens and you just don't know the answer at that moment. And the fact that, you know, we can pull out our definitely not 19th or 20th century phones to look it up while we were figuring stuff out is great. So I know that one of the other things we want to do, just because there's been so many updates in the last month, is try to kind of keep pushing the conference. And was it March 28th to the 30th in Cooperstown, correct?
That's correct. The March 28th to the 30th, Cooperstown. The last time we were there was 2017. Was that the
It was
year?
awesome.
Did you come to Cooperstown or
I
was it
did.
Cooperstown?
Yep.
So for the rest of our audience, Dustyn's the guy that put together a swag bag for each of the board members to promote the conference in Menomonie. I don't think that's happened since then. So you still have the honor of
Hey,
being.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
It was very cool. In more recent years, it's been more of a VBBA collaborative event activity with the clubs that sponsor the conference. So anyway, Cooperstown is our way of reaching out to the East Coast clubs, and it's a destination. So we're really hoping to get a really good turnout. Our average the last few years has been somewhere between 60 and 80 people. But the thinking is that people that haven't been to Cooperstown, haven't been to the Hall of Fame, they're going to want to be out there at this conference. And of
Yeah, as
course,
somebody who went to the 2017 one, this is the conference to go to, not downplaying everybody else's, but the place you stay is awesome. Obviously, you're next to the Hall of Fame, the distilleries, the eateries, the breweries, the cute little town. Like this should be the one you go to, and including myself, who hasn't been to many. I'm like, even I have it on my calendar because it's like you need to go. Like it's totally worth the trip, even if you bring the whole family because there's so much to
yeah,
do. And it's
yes,
such a cute town.
yes, and it's all in walking distance. You park your car and you just walk around to the different eateries and the
Yeah, I
hall.
don't remember. I don't remember getting in the car the whole time I was there.
That was
I'm
it.
pretty
You
sure we
just
walked everywhere.
park at the Otastaga. The cool part is one of the reasons we do this at the end of March is they give us the winter rate. The Otastaga Hotel, as you guys people, listeners, viewers, whatever may know, it's the hotel when they do the Hall of Fame induction into the Hall of Fame. It's like a 5-star hotel. Our rate of what they tell you is at 208, I think it is, for the single room. It's worth every nickel. They feed you the breakfast and that includes the breakfast on the Saturday and the Sunday morning. Um, it's one of those hotels that still has that gold-plated look and carpet everywhere, and uh, we're just there before the regular season, so we can get a really good price. And that's where we do the banquet, is in the hotel. And this year we're going to do a little different from what you saw in 2017. We'll do presenters, but only for the first hour. So we'll do the general meeting, and then right now we have Eric Miklich. This time I'm not having to fly him into Branson like I did the last time he presented. And if you know Jeff Cornhouse, Jeff Cornhouse, I think his nickname is Big Bat because he's a believer in using a 42-inch bat. And if you've never talked to Jeff, you haven't lived. He's a special guy. So his latest thing has been about the strike zone. And foolishly, Miklich, who is a friend, actually invited Cornhouse to his house. And they spent, knowing Cornhouse, 2 or 3 hours talking about the history of the strike zone. So immediately I'm like, well, that sounds to me about a great topic. In my years with the VBBA, we've never discussed that. So we definitely have Miklich on the list. And then I'm working on getting two other presenters that you may or may not have heard about. One of them's Phil Dixon. Phil Dixon was our keynote when we did the conference in Branson. I'd like to tell people that the VBBA was actually ahead of this whole movement to bring the Negro Leagues baseball statistics into the Major League Baseball statistics. And he talked about the African American players that played in the 1800s, and he was generous enough at the time. It didn't cost us anything other than for him to sell books and to give him a place to stay and food to eat. So I've got to get back to him. He's open to the idea. I was listening to a podcast that Bob Hendricks did. Bob Hendricks did out of the Negro Leagues Museum with he and Jeff and Bob and the historian for Major League Baseball. His name is, God, you're not helping. You're not helping, Dustyn.
I won't know it.
Anyway, they went through a discussion of the work that they had gone through to get Major League Baseball to include the Negro Leagues players' statistics into the Hall of Fame, and pointed out how the Negro League simply existed and because the Major League teams would. So I thought, Major League Baseball brought them in, and we need to have someone at our conference that can share that story with our community. And then the other lady that I want to bring in is, oh, here we go again, Kent State. She's presented at two of our conferences that we did online, and she presented last year. And I'm in talks with her to also be a presenter at this conference. I thought it would be fun to have her talk about the women owners in Major League Baseball, and not current major, but over the history of baseball, and what their take was, for example, on having Negro players on. There was a female owner of a Negro League club, so I'm thinking that'll be her starting point. Heathy, Heaphy, first name, it'll come to me. But she's also interested in attending. She's a vice president of the National Saber Organization and did a presentation on the Negro League players last year at the Fort Myers conference. Leslie Heaphy. It came to me. So, and that's in addition. Turns out, Colin Miller, and Colin's got this thing about Bill Lee. And apparently Bill Lee, who plays on the Savannah Bananas, I believe he's pushing 78. Who knows? By the conference, he'll be 79. We got him. He said he'll be our keynote. And part of what I've tried to do the last few conferences is I don't want a presenter that stands up there and reads his speech. I want them to be a personality that's connected to baseball, just like we had Denny McClain a couple of years ago. I think he was well received. I know he's not talking about baseball in the 1800s, but these are players that were connected to the overarching history of baseball over the last 150, whatever, 200 years. So, so we've got him lined up, and then we're looking to play on one of the ball fields there, and I'm in contact. I've got the lady at the Otasaga
I was just
helping.
gonna say, not to interrupt you here, but I know I've said this before. You
Yes.
have to play baseball there. Because
Yes.
in 2017 we did not. So we
I
gotta
had
make
my
it
slow
happen.
shovel. I was ready. So we're actually looking to play on what's the field that's named after the guy that never had anything to do with baseball, but the general. Um, um, so we can get that field. There's a little bit of a rental, a couple $100, and so we're working on getting that field. So, and the way the conference would work, I think it'd be for $80. I haven't figured out the finances. We've been really fortunate. Helen, the wild Sicilian Di Gaetano, has donated $1,000 to get the hotel. She's donating the cost of the swag bags, and she's donating the cost for the first 60 admissions to baseball's Hall of Fame. That's pretty cool.
That's
And
really cool. That's
very
great.
on her part. Um, so the plan is if you come to the conference, it's always hang out at the local bar. It's going to be one of these micro breweries. It turns out there's someone there. I think she's connected with the Chamber of Commerce. Her husband's the head chef or whatever at the brewery. Um, and then on the Saturday, of course, there's the usual general meeting. The hour, three choices of those three presenters I've talked about. And then the rest of your morning and lunch, you're on your own to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, check it out, walk around the town, check out the restaurants. And then we usually do the game in the afternoon about 2 o'clock. Ideally, and here I am bragging again because I don't know many conferences that did both the bound and no bound rules. But the Chicago Salmon, when they sponsored the conference in 2016 at the historic Methodist campground, I haven't been to another conference that's put together that kind of package. I'm not sure that we'll do that in Cooperstown because that'd be another $200 for a second field. But there are teams that play no bound and they get a little confused when they have to play the bound rule. And us, the players that play the bound rule, we're okay with that.
We very much are.
Right?
Yeah. I don't complain.
No, it gets them to our level, right?
Hey, you know what is I've been on the team that does the bound rule, and I played non-bound, and it stinks. So I don't feel bad when a bound rule team has to come and not, or do the opposite. And I'm like, I've done the same thing. You're fine.
World. Yes. Oh, goodness. So that's uh, pretty much the conference at this point. The good news is all of the member clubs should be getting a newsletter. We're right around 50 member clubs right now. I've just finished working with Alan Garcia. He really does the graphics, does a beautiful job, and that'll give you all the information that you need to know about the conference. You can already go to the VBBA website, and on the homepage, you can click on the button for the Otastaga, and that'll take you to the special link to get you that special hotel rate. And they also, of course, have the double bedrooms or whatever they call them. I think that's about 216 or 220. I pretty sure I put that in the newsletter. If not, you go to that link and you'll find out. They do charge you if you add extra bodies to the rooms beyond the two people. There's an up charge for that. So know that going in, because I know some of the clubs well, let's put it this way. There were times that my hotel room had at least 4 salmon in the room, and some of them showed up in the middle of the night and said, "Hello, we're
Yeah.
here."
Yeah, well, our room had 4 blue caps, and I kind of regret that decision.
Yes.
So
The whole tripping on them as you're racing to the washroom in the middle of the night.
that's
Yes.
the biggest problem, is that problem right there.
Yes.
I don't think I'll ever do that again.
The other thing, getting away from the conference, unless you have some other conference questions, um,
No.
is I'm trying to focus on social media in this newsletter. So we've done, I don't know, let's see, looking at the copy that I just got from Alan, there's 4 pages on it, including an introduction by me about the social media resources that are out there. I'm trying to get people to be familiar with the VBBA Town Hall. It's a closed group. Initially, we said only members of the VBBA could be in there, but I've expanded it. If you're connected to a vintage club, and you've got a history with them, because I'm the guy that admits you when you ask to join. I've been admitting those people. We're right around 480 members. I try, and I'd love for the other member clubs to do this. I try to get information about what the different clubs are doing, what games they've played. I've been including clubs out on the West Coast that are not VBBA member clubs, but I want people that are in the town hall at least to understand the depth and breadth of vintage baseball. We've got vintage clubs that are members, their organization is up in Colorado. So I get that in there. And of course, the East Coast clubs, the Florida clubs. So hopefully my goal is to have anybody that's a member of that website or that Facebook page, they're the ones that are adding that information to that Facebook page. I want it to be a community gathering. I don't want it to be and it's in the ground rules that we set out. Thank you, Matt Stone. Not a bitching and griping and a complaining and, oh, this team didn't do this or that team didn't do that. In my cover for all the different social media, I said the place for that would be on our traditional Vintage Baseball Association page. That's traditionally been a rules and regs kind of page. For a while, Corky Gaskell was providing some of those issues and answering questions. He hasn't been doing that lately. I'd love for him to continue to do that.
Yeah.
So, and then I don't know that people know we have an Instagram page and a Twitter page.
That was my next thing, is plug the Instagram, Twitter, and X, right?
Yep. And that's a place for, like, when we've done the conferences, I'll plug in the presenters and their backgrounds, their bios. So that's a little broader space, but it's still kind of like what we do with the Facebook page at a different level. And then and I don't know how many people take advantage. I'm thinking our membership on our VBBA YouTube site is what, 97 people, something like that. And I'd love for more people to subscribe to that. As you know, we go all the way back to your conference in 2014. Thank you, Go Live Sports, for the freebie that time. You get a chance to see Freight Train do a presentation. The great guys, of course, passed away since then. And a lot of really good presentations over the years. We don't have the 2017 conference. We didn't record it, the last Cooperstown. It's too bad because, of course, in addition to the keynote speaker, we had Marjorie Adams, who's kind of a warm up. She did a presentation about Doc Adams at that conference. And I suppose I should quickly throw in a plug for Doc Adams. We're still trying to get Doc into the Hall of Fame. The next chance is December of 2025. We may do some more with the conference to promote Doc Adams. I haven't talked with Colin about that lately. He's kind of our guy out there in New York that's a SABR member and really close to that whole movement to get Doc into the Hall of Fame. So hopefully, and the good news is I finally got the 2024 conference videos on the YouTube page. 3 or 4 of them went in the back door. They're not, you won't see them on that page. You can only get them by going to the VBBA website, because I'll think of his name eventually. The guy that sponsored the Fort Myers conference, he put them on YouTube first before sharing the links with me. So that's one of those. This is one of those things El Presidente does to keep things working. So I got to deal with smoothing that one out. But a great resource for clubs. You know, we're a visual culture now, and I think there are times it's easier for people to go to YouTube and to listen to these people do their presentations than it is, as much as I don't want to bespoil the VBBA website that we spend a lot of money to maintain and create. I think it's a great spot. You can get to see Jeff Big Bat Cornhouse do his baseball bat presentation at the Dearborn Conference, in case you want to know about the length of the bat and and the way you're supposed to actually swing the bat in the 1860s or 1800s. For the historian types, they go after us for not painting our shoes black and wearing watches when we shouldn't, which we know we shouldn't, and sunglasses, all that stuff. They could also go after the way people swing the bat, because we swing it the modern style. We don't.
Yeah, what are you talking about? There's not home run after home run in 1860
No,
baseball. There's
no,
not. No,
no.
not
Sorry,
at all.
no. It's not about the long ball.
Not
That
about the long ball.
excludes what we like to call the historic softball clubs that are all about driving the thing 400 feet out into God knows where. Yes. Um, and then of course we have our VBBA Today, which you've been kind enough to get us started on. We like to continue to do that and get you the chance to meet some other people in the vintage baseball community. That's our goal with this
Yep.
area. And then we're even looking into doing a VBBA app. The idea would be it would be the basic things that are on the website that you'd want to get to quickly. Like if there's a rule thing, we'd have a quick link to the rules, just to know what the member clubs are or contacts for the member clubs. But that's still in the beginning phases. Now to switch topics, you've been part of this conversation, but not in the depth of some of the other board members. Is that a polite way of explaining your presence and your availability? We've been dealing with the idea of a vintage baseball Hall of Fame, and we've decided not to do it that way. What we'd like the clubs to do, and we haven't gotten out there to promoting it, we simply want to give recognition to the people that have been out there, have been the people that put in the work to get vintage baseball to where it's at today. And we're thinking it'd be like just an honor board, not quite like the Vietnam Memorial, but the idea would be names that the member clubs wanted to recognize for their hard work and diligence in maintaining, creating their clubs. So we'll probably put out an all call in a sense to the vintage community and ask them to push forward, and I'm guessing a short biography of those people that they'd recognize. And so, I would immediately, in the case of Chicago Salmon, let me think. Oh, that's right, Ellie Boss Lady Carlson. It's a no-brainer, and I'm sure the other clubs that are people that are vintage baseball people that are listening to this podcast will say, "Oh yeah, I've got this guy." We want to avoid the committee thing, and you've got to go through 18 people, and then we narrow it down to 2 people. That's not the intent. It's to, and in part to honor people that were there at the beginning of the vintage baseball movement, at Bethpage Park in the 1980s, and the Ohio Muffins back in the early 1990s. Because without them, we wouldn't be the community we are today. And they're getting to that point where they're not going to be around much anymore. And I think it's part of our responsibility as an organization to thank them for what they've done and helping the vintage baseball movement. And then if you get your newsletter, I've included, of course, it wouldn't be a newsletter without Bob Sampson. So let's see. So he's got his column. I'm looking at it. I'm thinking he did some talks about the history of vintage baseball, and who was really played a role and who didn't. I now remember the field we're going to, because it's in Bob's article, and we want to get Doubleday Field when you come to Cooperstown. That's our goal. And I'm hearing that that's the field in Cooperstown. It's kind of like Grinder Field is for us in the Midwest, or the park out east. So a beautiful article. Then I got Mark Herman did a history of the Oregon Ganymedes. They played at the Detroit, whatever you call it. I can't use the word World Series, but that event. And the background of the club, how it got started, where they're at today. I always enjoyed when the Salmon played the Ganymedes. I just always enjoyed what Mark brought to the game, and he's a historian by training. Retired. He used to run um, in Rockford, the the museum in Rockford. They have a village, and I may think about that later on in the conversation. Then I wasn't sure we'd have enough articles, so I got a return from Bruce Allardyce. He's done some presentations. If you go to the VBBA YouTube, you'll see them about Civil War baseball. And this is a story about vintage baseball back in the era of the Civil War. And I think the readers will enjoy that. And what would the Vintage News Baseball Association newsletter be if it didn't have something by Corky Gaskell in it? So Corky's still the head of our Rules and Customs Committee. And fortunately or unfortunately, this of leaving the hinterland, as some people call Minnesota, Rochester, where he'd been forever with the Roosters, and he's moving down to Florida. He'll be near
Taking that retirement.
Yes, he and his wife are both. He's retired, she's retired, and they're moving to a town near Orlando. And he said some people on Facebook have asked, "Well, will you continue to deal with baseball?" He said he'll continue to make the baseballs. So pray God, if you need a historically accurate baseball, contact Corky Gaskell.
Does a great job.
People out there, right? And the Salmon have used his baseball, so I know it's a quality product. And then he may randomly umpire down in Florida. Of course, I will call him out.
Oh, Gary, what the whole time you sounded good. Now you just blanked out. Can you hear me right now? No. Is this like the Oscars where we're gonna get you off the stage right now that your microphone just cuts out? Oh, there we go.
Am I back?
You're back.
Oh, thank God. What did I leave off on before I broke up? Was I celebrating?
You broke up on Corky down in Florida umpiring.
All right. So the goal is to keep Corky into umpiring because that's his thing. And he certainly understands the history of the game. He's a great one of the great personalities of our vintage baseball movement. And of course, I will continue to stay in touch with him. And as we get near the end of this podcast, as I'm guessing that was my signal.
I was just gonna say, not saying it was your signal, but it might have been the universe's signal.
Well, it's fine. I'll be heading down to Florida. I'm a snowbird, and I like to spend time with the Awkwards and the other two clubs that are down there that eventually I'll remember the names of. They actually have a game in the middle of October. I'll try to get out there for that, and their schedule should be out there shortly. So
that'll be great. Well, and hopefully on the next episode we'll have somebody that's not you. We'll force the other people.
God. Enough of me. How boring can it be? Yes.
So thanks everybody thanks Gary for being on these first few. We'll kind of pump this out over the next few weeks, this one, and then we'll backlog the other one because Gary had a lot of good information in that one too. And then hopefully by starts hitting in about a month from now, starts getting cold everywhere. People are going to be missing vintage baseball. So we'll be sure to get some other VBBA board members on here, and I'll force them to talk, and we'll have a good time leading up to the conference. That's the plan. So again, I still don't have an outro for this, Gary. So at some point we'll figure it out. I know.
I gave you the music.
I have that. I just don't have a good way to end it other than just saying thanks and all the huzzahs and hurrahs and all the things you say at the end of vintage baseball games. Again, follow VBBA, Instagram. You can find it on X. All the places. Join the town hall page. I just sent, while Gary was talking, I sent some invites, some new players on my team. That is a great page to really keep up with some stuff, especially in the off season. It's just cool to see what other people do, and it's probably the best way. If you can't go around and like 200 different Facebook pages, that's usually the best one, and some people do a good job. And I think once people start reusing it again, because it was going really good for a few years there. I know it kind of dies out as everything does, but once people start posting, then it gets back in people's brains. So I would strongly suggest everybody listening to do that too. So with that said, thanks, Gary, and we'll catch you again in the future once I actually have an outro in the future. And that's it. So thanks, Gary.
Thank you.